this project that I'm working on now, which is the artificial intelligence and and the sort of human interaction. So I finished a huge book proposal the other day, and this is kind of relevant to what we'll talk about. So I'll maybe start again. Okay, so I'm just going to say this: the relationship potentially that a PhD student has with their supervisor can last. If it's good, it lasts for decades, and it should do in different ways as a sort of mentorship or whatever, right? I
Hmm.
think you say you have a very good relationship with your previous
Yes,
supervisor.
yes, I do. I just worked with him on a project. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously it's relatively, not a long time ago, right? When you finish your PhD.
I only finished it. I graduated in July, but I started it nearly, well, no, over a decade ago. So I've known him a long time. Yeah.
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 So I think if these relationships work, they can be really important. So my supervisors, and I mentioned, I think this was my director of studies was Professor Stephen Frosch, and then Laura Malvi. So both were also on the supervisory team. Both are huge names in their respective fields. And Stephen Frosch, it was his kind of job um, to make sure that I complete it and I do it well. So he was I mentioned he's a very amazing scholar and researcher. And not but he is a very traditional way of supervising his students. He's really good. He always reads your stuff, gives you good feedback. And he can be very strict. So when I think about some of my former PhD students, I don't know how well they would have fared with him because sometimes I think people need a little more support than straightforward academic support, which is what we'll talk about. However, what is important, so I finished my PhD 12 years ago, and just over 12 years ago, actually, almost 13, well, 12 and a half years ago. And it's not as if it's not like we are friends or anything. We don't hang out. I don't have a drink with him. But now and again we communicate, and now and again I show him something I'm working on, and he can still be fairly tough. So I was very, very pleased that I sent him this book, proper book proposal with a large section. I mean, the proposal was like 10,000 words, so there was like a
Wow.
lot of writing in it. It was so because I wanted them to see clearly what it is, because I think it's quite innovative using psychoanalysis in terms of looking at the human AI relationships currently. And, you never know. So I sent it off to him and asking if he would be a reviewer possibly, and thinking he's just not going to respond quickly because it's a large document. He might not have time to read it quickly, and he read it really quickly and said, "Oh, it's amazing and it's exciting," and he'd be delighted to be the reviewer. And that's the sort of thing when these relationships work. So I'm really pleased and kind of feel validated. So in terms of academic things, if these relationships work, then they can work years later. And of course, people have complex and good relationships with their supervisors, but that sometimes does not happen all the time. And also, I would just say, even if you have the most, excellent relationship with your supervisor, then they may still not be able to offer you the support in other areas that you need, right? Because they simply don't have the time, the capacity, I think is the fashionable word to do that, which is where sometimes I think at times you might need extra support in your journey, which we at the Scholars Mentor can provide and provide. And in my experience of supporting um, students and other clients, is the kind of sense of empowerment that people need. And it's really so kind of basic to a certain extent, because we all need, that's what we need. But it's the sense of empowerment that you can bring to somebody's life. It's really important and it really matters. And it's something that at the moment universities simply do not think it's in their kind of job description because they can't, they're on their knees, they don't have the capacity. So if as a research student or PhD student or any a member of staff, if you have an issue of some sort, then immediately you might be labeled as needing severe mental health support rather than perhaps needing some life coaching support and some other type of tools. And this is complicated. This is a complicated area, right? And we talked about it a little bit before because there's nothing, it's great, to have mental health support. However, the reality of it is also that if it's kind of named that somebody maybe is depressed or whatever it is, it can potentially also not be, a great thing to have on your record because of the stigma at the minute,
Yes.
which we still have in the current
Yes.
climate, right?
Yes. No, I was very I got so just to like kind of reflect on exactly what you're talking about. I got diagnosed with ADHD very late into my PhD process. Now, a university can handle that sort of one of three ways. They can do nothing. They could do what you're doing, say, oh, this person is problematic, and they're going to be a problem. Or they could do what I was very lucky, my university did, which was they immediately went, these are the ways in which we can support you positively, which had nothing to do with kind of actually, it was largely giving me a mentor. It was, I was given sort of a specialist supporter whose sole job was just kind of not academic support. It was very much like keeping me on track, and I was I really want to acknowledge that was the University of East Anglia. They really did have a good support system in place for that. Because it wasn't stigmatized. It was like, okay, here's ways we can give you support. And they let the medical side, they let me handle that. This was just from an academic kind of life perspective, as you're saying.
Exactly. So, in terms of, I've got the book launch, which is also going to be,
Yeah.
they say, like free training. And the way I think we're going to have another conversation aimed at people who live in the States because of the time difference. But I mean, we'll see how it goes. But we're sort of aiming at India and people in that zone and Singapore and so on. So it's in the morning at 10 o'clock. So obviously it's not going to work at all for the US, but we'll see how it goes. And in it we have so I'll be talking about the book, but also have a special guest who comes from Singapore and is of Indian origin, and this is Dr. Vandana, and she will be talking about her experience of moving across continents, which I think is going to be very useful and of interest to people, and how, and she's incredibly, impressive and resilient person, and yet there had been some very serious issues in which she had to then dig deep to find some strength to carry on and find alternative solutions. I think it's really interesting. So in terms of the book, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts and my experience in it. So, I've written a lot and I am working still on kind of serious intellectual engagement, particularly one in my career as an academic. And even a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, my actual practice was always kind of engaged and involved with ethics of one sort or another and asymmetrical power relationships. But one could say, whilst it was actually quite successful in a commercial world and popular kind of audiences, it had these big intellectual ambitions, and certainly my academic work and publications. Whereas this little book, it really is supposed to be a guide. It's a guide, it's a manual. I'm sharing what I know and what I've learned. And also, I'm sharing these various exercises, which are sort of meditations and little tools which anybody can do themselves. So, of course, I think it's better to do with somebody or in groups or something. However, you can do it yourself, absolutely. And I think particularly meditation is a very underused tool and it will make a huge difference to you if you use it straight away because of kind of accessing different resources in yourself in order to find different ways forward and pathways and energy to carry on with whatever task you've set yourself, right? Whether it is a PhD or whether it is some task I'm sure that you're working on at the minute. And sometimes these tasks can feel kind of overwhelming. And you can think, can I really complete? At this moment in time, nobody's standing with any form of whip over me saying, oh, do write another book or do this or do that. Absolutely not. It literally comes from within. I want to write about Agnieszka Holland, and that's another thing I have to submit in literally in 2 weeks. Um, and I want to write about psychoanalysis and artificial intelligence because I think there's some important things to say. But this inner strength that you and I and anybody who is doing anything which involves completing a project can be tough. And I think you can access these resources through meditation and other sort of tools that I talk about, including exercise, including obviously hanging out with peers and so on. But hanging out with peers can be difficult if it's not guided because sometimes people just keep exchanging doom and gloom stories, right? It's
Sure.
awful, it's also depressing. So somehow um, there is a way in which I think, you can be guided, and I enjoy working in groups as well with researchers and students and also other people in terms of um, finding ways of supporting each other rather than just sharing ghastly stories. Because ghastly stories are here. We live in a very difficult moment in time. And maybe all moments are difficult, but certainly it feels like this one is a particularly difficult moment in time, right? Politically, and all sorts of things are going on. And so it's very easy to just say to yourself, you know what? There's no point. Whereas somehow there's always every point in doing good work because we have to believe it will ripple through somehow and make a difference in the world. Honestly, that's what I think. That's because otherwise, what's the point? And somehow, there's this whole new agey thing, which can be difficult. I think it can be, I mean, to a certain extent, I would say I am a very spiritual person. I am. I have just become a Quaker formally. I've been an attender for 2 years. Now I am a member of the society because of its key tenets of simplicity, equality, justice, and peace.
Yeah.
So I really feel strongly, I'm very engaged with all of this. And I believe we can make a difference. And we've just passed a very important sort of statement after the yearly meeting about that. But I do acknowledge how hard it is to hold on to one's spirituality, if you like, in a positive way in this current world. And
Mm.
so I think a lot of people also turn to curious practices uh, which may not be helpful. And if they are helpful to you, then go for it. But, there's a difference between acknowledging some other bigger force and fields of energy that we know exist because it's quantum physics, and then somehow thinking, I'll just somehow imagine that I'll manifest by putting a couple of
Yeah.
pictures on the board. And I think that's really can be quite damaging.
Yeah. Do you think there's an ego centricity to New Ageism that's not present in traditional spirituality?
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
would
mean,
agree.
I think that there can be also it's very difficult because anything that you do, even I mean, I was thinking even clearly what I do, I would somehow I would prefer not to have to announce stuff that I do in public in terms of for it not to be in any way selling. I don't like the idea of selling.
Right.
I like the idea of just saying to people, I have something that I have to offer, and please come if you're interested, and it might help you. However, some of the new age specialists, I think, are very good at selling, and whether they're very good and making you feel good about yourself is a separate matter.
Mm.
And some of them are better than others. And I do find it quite upsetting because I've done a few of these courses also when people, those who run them, these new age, I keep not saying prophets because they're not prophets, but they set themselves up as such.
Yeah, no, I can see why you would use that word. It's a similar kind of, follow me kind
Yeah,
of.
I think it's very difficult that any of these practices are not a cult type of thing, And I think it's good to kind of watch it. I'm actually doing a course as well now, another one, because I like doing these courses and because I feel I always learn something. And there are lots of things about it which are good, some not so good, because they're too centered on one person's vision. Whereas really what I try and do in my practice is clearly draw from all kinds of traditions, particularly psychoanalytical tradition, psychodynamic tradition, but also elements of the new age, the best ones, that we take in terms
Sure.
of meditation, some spiritual tools, but also absolutely basic things of exercise and some sort of CBT, notions. So what I think in terms of what I think is important. So I'll just very touch upon incredibly briefly, which I'll talk about more during the actual book launch, about this Lion methodology that I mentioned, which is very simple, really, in a way, in terms of what it is. I just thought it was a nice kind of word, lion. But it's obviously the first thing is learning, L for learning. It's learning also about who you are, who you might be, and who you would like to be. And this sounds simple, but isn't. It's a first step. Do you have a plan? Do you know whom you would like to be rather than maybe your family or, whoever, some other professionals or whoever? No, no. So the first big job is look into your heart. And this is not a 2-second operation, and try and establish it, because when you do some work on it through different tools, and you and we've done a little one
I
as
did
an
a little
exercise.
bit.
Right. Yeah. It's good because new things come up, and they will come up. And it's interesting and important to think in terms of the PhD. You think, why am I doing this PhD? And I would always say finish. Obviously, I would say it. I would say complete it. Even if you have a suspicion that you didn't start because you wanted to, you may have started because your family wanted you to. I would say try and complete, but maybe try and shift your subject a little, which again is kind of controversial. A lot of my actual completions, students as opposed to clients, if you like, have changed their topic and proceeded to complete successfully, whereas there was a moment then they thought, I actually don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So this is very important. You need to learn about who you are, more or less. You need to be, I is for inspiration, find somebody who can inspire you, but also inspire other people. The task and the kind of thing of thinking, oh, maybe I'm making a little difference to somebody, even when you are a student, you can think, well, like what? Well, a lot of research students already teach, right? There's loads of things where you could try and inspire other people in positive ways, and that's empowering for you. Then organize, it's back to organizing your mind. Oh, Lion, organize your mind. Be aware when negative thoughts come to you, and get rid of them. I mean, there's sort of simple tools when you can do it, put them into love bubbles and send them away. But no, be aware if you let them linger, then they will affect everything, and you don't want that. So you need organize your mind, and it can be tricky if you do it on your own, but it's very important. And that kind of idea, because I am also Mind Valley trained coach and meditation trainer. And of course, you could say to me, well, you're not so keen on New Age. Is Mind Valley New Age? And I would say elements of New Age, but what is great about them is that they have different teachers in their
Hmm.
platform. So it's not a cult,
I
definitely
was I
not.
was just going to ask if meditation comes into this O one
Yeah,
where yeah,
exactly.
inviting the thoughts to let them go kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And the O thing also is in the meditation, what's is important to say and to know that meditation practices over the centuries have certain similar
Hmm.
themes. And what and it you basically fundamentally always you get yourself grounded and you try and be calm, but you can do it fairly quickly and you can learn how to do it fairly quickly. And then there's basically it is helpful if it's guided to begin with, but fundamentally, yes, you're trying to connect to the light, and it's either, but it's light in you, inside you, or the kind of energy fields, which I like to think as sort of supported by quantum physics rather than just woo-woo. But it's
Yeah.
interesting that in the Quaker, for example, meditations, the actual thing is the actual words from the 17th century, George Fox's words, are very similar to some of the New Age meditations, very similar.
That's
So
interesting.
the process of trying to get somewhere where you sit still and you're in the light and wait for some things to come to you,
Because
is
that's a
universal.
isn't it? A Quaker meeting is essentially a group meditation, is it not? Like large, like
There are two different things. The Quaker meeting is a silent meeting for worship. So we would meet and for an hour. Sometimes somebody does stand up at our meeting. I'm in Hammersmith in London. I would say very rarely, but sometimes somebody stands up because they feel to say something about something important. But that's slightly separate thing from, I mean, I do meditate during my Quaker meeting, yes. And I do a variety of things, which um, you could say is a form of prayer, but it is a quiet, silent thing. So I do because I've been through guided meditations, so I know how to do the 17th century meditation. I'm such a geek, I always like to know how people do things. But fundamentally, what I find is that any moments which you can do like this, and you can literally go for a walk, sit by the river. I say that because I live by the river for a few minutes. Try and ground yourself and try and ask yourself some of these key questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it really because what? Because I want to do it, or because I want to please somebody? If you're doing it because you want to please somebody, then I would say don't, because it will not last for very long, and then you'll be frustrated, you'll be doing all kinds of self-sabotaging. So this is a big task, and in my lion, just to say that it's obviously next steps and navigating these difficult and different things and steps which await you in life. But yes, I think that in various, there's also, we can talk about, which we touched upon at some point, various things like being angry about things. Again, people people have very different ideas about it. The general idea is, of course, we want to get rid of our anger so that we can forgive those who have wronged us, and somehow there are always people who have wronged us, right?
yeah,
um,
forever.
Forever. So, but it's good to get to a place where you try and through this meditation, get rid of these negative feelings for no other reason but that it doesn't help you. It really doesn't. It's best to try and find some tranquility in your soul so then you can get on with the work that you want to do. However, before I think you are in a position to be forgiving anybody, you may sometimes need to get through a passage of being angry and letting yourself be angry and using that anger in a positive way for example, in some way be subversive in a positive, creative way, because we still live in a patriarchal society. So why not, be angry at it still and try and do things creatively, which maybe do subvert this system. So, and I've written a book which, The Nasty Woman and the Neo Femme Fatale in Contemporary Cinema a few years ago, and actually was about telling stories, that women telling stories and finding different ways of ending these narratives in which a woman who can be difficult or angry or whatever survives is the big thing,
Right.
and does her own thing and doesn't get domesticated.
Yeah. I always think of anytime those kind of stories come up, I always think of Medusa as sort of the classic kind of wronged woman, told in a patriarchal lens. Yeah.
Yeah, but look about Medusa. You've mentioned it. It really is a terrible story.
It's a horrific story. Yeah, people don't realize that she's a victim,
She's a
right?
victim. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
really story. And then she's turned into a monster, and
Yeah.
then that's it. And then she just kills everybody. That's her fate. I mean, it's not a very good fate, is it?
No, so I always there are some beautiful feminist retellings of Medusa that are very, very moving. But that's the one, just in terms of that kind of the patriarchal lens on on women's stories. That's the story that always instantly comes to my head. Um, but they
Also,
are,
what
yeah.
I wanted to talk about, are we doing okay for time?
We are okay for time at the minute, yeah.
Um, we have to, everybody has to acknowledge and recognize that we're people, we're humans, we're not machines.
Sure.
I didn't sleep well last night because I was thinking about my various projects actually. So it was positive, but I wake up and I know I'm going to be talking to you and I think, oh, I feel exhausted and so on. So it's good to acknowledge that we are not perfect, that there are all kinds of struggles that everybody has, and they do, and it still is like that, and it's at any moment of your life. And the thing that makes some people different from others, I will then say, okay, I don't feel great, but I'll be fine, and I will just carry on because I love it so much. I love my writing, I love talking to people and helping them. And it's just the best thing when you see somebody, it really is. It's just such fun when you see somebody suddenly shifting their attitude and saying, actually, I'm going to do this and this, not because somebody's expecting me to do, but because I really want to. And then, yeah, and then the universe will help you a bit. I believe that. The universe wants you to succeed, but there are challenges, yes.
I I
Okay,
love that message. Yeah, we've got just under 10 minutes. I think that's a beautiful message and I agree with it. Please continue. Sorry.
the Viva. So one of the things that we do, and I like talking about it because it's very important, is, and I think if I did nothing else in terms of supporting research students, but just the preparation for Viva, then I think I would be doing a brilliant job. And this is what I can really do well, and I can really help you, which is, the preparation for Viva. The Viva should be this moment of triumph for you as the researcher. You've worked and worked and worked through all these things. You're here, you're getting there. And so many people, and I've seen it as an examiner on the other side, when I examine people, other students, vivas and thesis, and some of them are really not good. And I sit there thinking, oh my goodness, somebody should have prepared you a little better to hold your ground, and that's what we do as well, prepare people for a viva in all kinds of ways. So when you get there, you feel calm and confident and absolutely sure that whatever is thrown at you, you will be able to do it well. And then it's of course it will help your qualification, which is what we want, but also this training will help you going forward, right? Because for any job interview, anything like this the Viva, because it's so much more difficult, I would say, than anything else, will help you, and that's very important. That's what we do.
I think it's such a good piece of advice. I think just having, as when you go through a PhD, how many of your friends end up on the PhD process? I think it's the single most terrifying thing while you're doing the PhD. It's this looming thing ahead of you.
And
Um,
also because often with the approach to Viva, what I think happens is that there is an element of course, insecurity, meaning also you can't control exactly what will happen. You're hoping that the examiners who've been invited are benevolent beings as well as experts in their field. But something happens in the Viva, and I've seen it with my students and also with the fellow examiner. Sometimes people are too tough. They don't need to be as tough as often they are. It's almost like the examiners, like they want to
mm,
feel that they're so important. I don't exactly understand the mechanism because I don't feel that at all. I have to say, I'm not such a sweetie. I can be uh, just horrible like anybody else. But during the Viva, there's some other mechanism for me. When I am an examiner, I really try and simply find out what this candidate knows. And so I'm not like that, but sometimes people are, and they can make feel the candidate really besieged. So the
sure.
preparation is what to do so you don't feel overwhelmed and besieged, and rather can be very calm, whatever happens. So some of my students, I mean, I always teach people to pause and wait and do all sorts of things and slow yourself down, although I'm usually naturally not slow at all. But in a situation when that people are grilling you, it's good to have these pauses, look into your heart, and wait a little bit before you speak. And there could be all kinds of things.
That's good advice for any interview or any kind of situation. Just I think the instinct is to answer immediately. We feel like, oh, we must have the answer, and it's okay to absorb the question for a moment and then answer. Yeah. That pause is such good advice, I think.
Such a good advice, which I haven't done in this interview at all because I'm kind of underslept and generally exhausted with my various projects, but happy.
Yes, and it's not, I don't think we're not grilling and so but
No.
um
Um,
there's about 5 minutes left and I wanted to give you the chance to touch on anything that you didn't get to.
Well, I think it's important. What I'd like to say in terms of what we do and I do and how I can work with people, I think that I'd like to encourage people to come forward. Obviously, come to, if you're in this relevant hemisphere, come to our book launch, but also to reach out. And I always will offer people some completely free support, particularly if they really can't afford it. It's just because of my because I can, because of my ethical beliefs. But really don't hesitate to come forward, ask for help, and then we can work out what we can do and what would be the system which would help you going forward. So that would be my kind of key message. Of course, there are other people working with me. It is a business initiative. So yes, there will be systems and schemes which you would have to pay for, but do not make yourself feel, oh, I don't want to reach out because I can't afford it, because that is not good. The journey, the research journey, and as I say, any other journey towards any project that you want to complete, and if the project is demanding, it's hard, and it's good to have people to cheer you on, to support you, and to give you all sorts of tools to make this a success. And I think we can do that.
That's amazing. I mean, I have to vouch for the Scholars Mentor myself. I think it's an amazing program. So please, we've mentioned it, but tell people where can they find this book launch? Where can they find you? Give all the details. So book launch, date
Book
and
launch
time.
It's online. It's on the 12th of June. And there is an Eventbrite link. It's on my LinkedIn as well at 10 a.m. And I keep saying it. So we'll have to have another conversation for the US colleagues because already my various clients there said I should have done this. But anyway, 12th June, 10 a.m.
12th
The
June, 10 a.m. We'll put a link in the description.
Yeah, exactly. And just register with Eventbrite. And it's a conversation for an hour with Vandana as well. And then there'll be Q&As and things. So definitely do that. And yeah, and I always think it's always good to, so one of the things I talk about in the book is finding people you want to work with and collaborate. It's in all kinds of ways, because lots of unexpected gifts can come through these collaborations as well. And not all of them are immediately obvious. So give yourself a chance, find the time to create new relationships, and even you and we will, I hope we'll do a lot more. And I know we are both, so we have a lot on. I hate the word busy, but we have a lot on. But, it's nice when things begin to happen which are not kind of, it's not immediately obvious where they lead, and then they lead somewhere amazing, right?
Yes, absolutely. You got to nurture those relationships a little bit, even if you're not sure, like you're saying, you're not exactly sure where it's going. Sometimes you just know, hey, we might work together on something. Who knows? You've just got to put a little bit of time and effort in, and whether it pays off or not, maybe it's just because it's a nice thing to do. Maybe it's
No,
just,
no, it's not even that not pays off or not. This is not right framing. You will always learn from new
well,
experiences.
that's it, right. You will get something out of it, right? Yeah,
Absolutely. And that's
yeah.
when you sometimes think, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, I'm scared. Just think, what is the one thing that I'd be happy about if it comes off out of this encounter? Just one little thing. And then all kinds of amazing things will transpire and open up.
I think that's very, very true. Yeah, though, thank you so much. Where can people, very quickly, people can find you at Scholars Mentor. Is it .com, .co?
Yes, yeah. Scholarsmentor, one word.com, and also on LinkedIn and various other places.
Amazing.
Yes, and Facebook, Instagram, a little less, but yes. And yes, and I look forward to doing various schemings with you.
Yes, likewise, likewise. So, do get in touch. Do attend the book launch. It's going to be fantastic. Look out for these other books. The AI stuff. I saw the Substack. Really interesting. Really, really interesting stuff with
I'm
AI.
fascinated by it. Are we going to be switched up? Because
We're
I want
going to, yeah.